Afternoon. Okay, thank you. All good. Yous? Plenty to talk about. It's not for me. I think it's very much taken away from the tradition of football and what it's about, which is ultimately the support, the fans, the community. And it's just, for me, it's just a case of the rich trying to get richer. And it becomes about greed at that point and not about what football's all about. Football starts around the fans, around your city, around your community. And it's just stripping all that away to go to a place to look after, the richer. So it's not one that I'm a fan of. I certainly wouldn't support it. I doubt anyone at our club would support it in any way, especially the traditions we have at our club. So it's very much something I'd be wholly against. And the one they've got as well is that, continually everyone in their own associations and UEFA are continually trying to improve the game in the best way possible. Even currently UEFA are discussing how they can make the UEFA competitions better, how they can involve maybe more teams and everything else, which is for the good of the game and the clubs, and it's across the board. But then when you get ones who want to break off on their own and look after themselves, then it's just selfish. It's selfish, and that's not what football's all about for me. Yeah, but it's we've never did that, and that's always been speculation as well and something. But I haven't spoken to anyone who agrees with it myself. If you've seen comments from some of the presidents or people at the clubs who are obviously supporting this, but anyone I've spoke to don't get it. It's a bit confusing as well, to be honest. But again, it's not for me. It just goes against what football's about for me. Again, it's still very early, so it's difficult to gauge the actual feeling of everyone. Yeah, it's kind of probably shocked everyone, I think. It seemed to come around very quickly in terms of how it moved over the weekend. So I think everyone's still trying to take it all in. But certainly in UEFA competitions, that's what it's always been. It's been the elite, but everyone has their opportunity to go and compete against the elite, whoever you may be. So if you're successful in your domestic league, and that's across the board, then they all come together and they compete in a, European competition. And then if you strip that back, then what does that become as well? So it dilutes that. So I just think it takes away, like football as a whole, community across the world, across Europe. I just think I don't agree with it.
Do you see this as an inevitability? Oh, sorry. Do you see this as inevitable, or do you think there could be such a backlash against it, given what you're just saying and the people that you're speaking to? Many managers and fans are seemingly against it. Could the backlash be big enough that this is not an inevitability?
Yeah, well, I think you see players and managers even from Liverpool last night, who are a club and involved in it, coming out and they're against it, and they're speaking out against it, and that's their own club. You see some of the reaction from fans, from other players from other clubs who are not directly involved in it. And again, I've not seen a positive comment on it in that respect. So these are the people who are football people. They're in the game, they're in the midst of it, they understand it, they understand the connection with the support, what football really comes from. But the problem being now is, the money and the power at the top end. It becomes, for me, about that and not actually what football's about. But you have to, listen to your support. You have to listen to the football people at the club as well, because they're the ones with the true understanding of football, and not just business and money.
The UEFA president, Alexander Jeffrin, mentioned Celtic today, specifically about Celtic and Rangers, saying that as far as he's concerned, UEFA and the European competitions need the likes of Celtic and Rangers.
Yeah, and that's positive, and I think he'll, name check is because of, again, our history and tradition and what we've done in the competition in the past as well. Again, we're probably a good example of a club who, very much about our community and our support as well. So Again, going back to it, that's what football is. It's about our support. We provide the product for our support, make them proud and everything else. So again, if your support don't agree with it, it's difficult to support the club and team when you're going totally against what they believe in.
John, given that statement from Alexander Sheffield and saying that UEFA competition need the likes of Celtic and Rangers, do you think there's then a contradiction of just how hard they make it for the likes of Celtic and Rangers to actually get into the competition proper?
It's difficult because there's so many associations, so many clubs, who all want to be part of that. And our problem being is probably our coefficient, down to, nationally, it's made it more difficult for us now. We're now in a better position now. We're getting into a better position now where, we can get more clubs involved in European competition. Hopefully, we're, going to be doing less qualifying games and stuff like that. So the path has become easier because we've kind of competed well in Europe of late. So that helps. But certainly I know they're talking about things, behind the scenes in terms of how they can, kind of revamp it slightly and make it maybe bigger or more easier to get into and make it a better competition. So there's a lot of positive talk. I think coming out UEFA, again, they've not got any confirmation on how that'll look, but they're certainly looking at things and how they can, have more involvement and make the competitions that they run better, which is good news for us as well.
From a Celtic perspective, then you would welcome those changes?
Yes.
Also, Dominic McKay came in yesterday, first day at the club. Have you spoken to him at all?
I haven't. We've also had a busy day kind of preparing for Aberdeen. We'll travel up there this afternoon and then obviously the game tomorrow. So I think we're penciled in maybe to catch up the later in the week, maybe Friday or so. So he's obviously going to be busy himself. We have a lot of people to see and things to do. So at some point this week we'll probably catch up.
How important is it, do you think, just getting him in the door now to help that transition with we're going to be changes in the summer?
Yeah, I think especially coming into a club like Celtic, the demand that comes on you very early, especially if Peter's going to be stepping aside in that period during pre-season or just before, then there's a lot goes on very early at the club. I've been here long enough to understand the demand straight away in terms of getting the squad together, getting the team prepared, and then you're going into European competition very quickly before even your domestic season starts. So, I think it's good timing. He comes in, he gets a feel for the place, gets an understanding of how it operates and what he might have to do. And that will make the transition easier, having Peter there to help him with that. And then rather than coming in cold, right on top of the qualifying games and stuff. So, yeah, it's better that he's in early, gives him time to bed in, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Don, just talking about Peter there. Peter has been on European boards and he's spoken in the past about the chance that UEFA and the big clubs want to modernise and want to keep Celtic up there so that it wouldn't perhaps be left behind. Have you had a chance to speak to Peter at all? Did he see something like this coming so soon?
I think not really. No, I've spoken to Peter on a number of things, but not really anything like this breakaway league. Certainly from my point of view, I'd heard bits about it along the way in the last month or whatever. But I think it caught certainly me by surprise how quickly it all seemed to come together and these teams were coming out and supporting it. So again, it's a wee bit of a shock, and I think it's even watching TV last night, it's just everyone's talking about it. It's getting massive exposure. But not for the right reasons. It seems to be everybody seems to be fighting against it at the moment. So again, I'll just need to see how things develop in the coming days. But I'm sure it's not the end of it, and there'll be a lot of chat to come.
Talking about the football last night, speaking on Sky, Darren Evans and Jamie Carragher talking about putting rivalry aside and everyone's going to have to unite against it. Do you think that could perhaps be a small positive of something like this, that the whole football community across Europe, across the world, puts rivalries aside and unites and say, we need to have a look at what we're doing economically and altogether we need to be more sensible on that?
Yeah, I think so, because if you have a certain number who are doing it out of maybe greed or for their own good, then if that affects across the board football, then everyone has to come together and do the right thing for football, because ultimately, we need each other to survive. That's the reality. We need the competition, we need the rivalries to make it exciting, to make it the product that it is, which then brings in the revenue and allows us to continually evolve and become better across the board. And it supports our leagues, it supports our national teams, everything else with it. And without competition, then the product's not the same. So if you start taking You know, the big teams out of Spain, you know, where do they go? Or the big teams out of France, where do they? So it affects everything. So again, it's about uniting, making a kind of decision across the board, which is good for football. And then if UEFA can, as I spoke about earlier, you know, evolve the club competitions in a way that helps everyone as well, then it's a win-win for everyone.
John, with just a few games left to the season and you know, nothing really to play for, how difficult is it to motivate the players going toward the end of the season?
It's not difficult because we still have to approach the games with the right mentality. They obviously don't have the edge of, you know, you're going for something in terms of a trophy. But again, I've said it before, you have to go out and represent yourself in the right manner. Any game you play, you've got pride to play for. You've got, you know, showing yourself every time you play. And that's the mentality we want at the club, you know. And if you don't do that, then you're not a right fit for us going forward. So in terms of how it is, we'll approach the game as professional as we possibly can. We'll go out to win each game, and we'll just take it as that.
Obviously, after an Old Firm defeat, there was criticism leveled at the club and leveled at the squad. You know, people say that, you know, because of the lack of, you know, competition that they've got until the end of the season, players are downing tools or whatnot. What's your response to criticism like that?
I think it's always the go-to, you know, in terms of when you've had a difficult season and you fall behind and you get a negative result. Everybody always goes straight for the attitude one. I'm not really having it at times. You know, in terms of, I know the players, I know how they work on a daily basis, you know, very motivated getting into that game. And reality is, in the game, we didn't start the way we wanted to. We were a wee bit tentative. Then when we found our rhythm, we got going again. Unfortunately, we were down in terms of the game, the scoreline at that point. You know, but they kept fighting. We created chances. The big moments in the game was the difference. You know, Rangers had 2 moments first half. They got 2 goals. We had then chances second half, especially, or even the first half at 1-0. Stephen Welsh's chance. If that goes in, it's a different game. It's a totally different game. It gives your spirit a lift, your motivation a lift, your confidence, and then you attack the game. Then you get a sucker punch. You go 2, so you have to regroup at half time. And I thought we came out with a real positive attitude in the second half. You know, we got a shot in the first minute. We created numerous chances. But in the big moments, we didn't take them to give ourselves a chance to come back in the game, you know. And I get it, the frustration and everything else, you know, but I know the group well enough to know that they certainly never down tools. You know, that's not in their makeup. They're still working. Confidence isn't 100%, but we have to work through that and we have to commit to that. But that's just the way it is. People have opinions, but, you know, it's not for me, that one.
Just finally from me, John, you look at the 3 Old Firm games in isolation and you look at Celtic take their chances and Paisley win all 3 of them. There's talk of, obviously, Peter leaving, Scott leaving, Neil had left, of this huge rebuild and transition period at the club. Is it as big as do you see it as big as a challenge as what other people see it as on the outside, or do you think that it's the rescale and the rebuild at Celtic is as big as what people think?
Yeah, what you need is a mix. So squads, you know, and clubs continually evolve. So what we've come off the back of in it this season is tremendous success over a long period of time. You know, a real solid foundation, good structure behind the club and behind the team to allow us to be successful. Now we've come through this season, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, come out a huge amount of challenges, you know, and that's certainly not an excuse. And we underperformed, you know, and we've had a poor season by our standards. Now, again, it's came to a place where probably this season there will be more turnover than we've probably had in previous seasons, down to, you know, players who are coming out of contract. The makeup of the squad at the minute, we don't hold massive numbers like we have done in the past. So we're going to have to make replacements. There's obviously change going on behind the scenes, you know, in terms of at the management side, at Peter's side, you know, whatever else the club decide to do. So there are a number of changes, but behind that you have to keep a solid foundation as well, you know, and it's not rip everything up and it's a shambles and you start again. You have to identify what the problems were, fix them and build on what we've already built over a number of years. You know, and not forget about that, because the easiest thing in the world is to go very short term and focus purely on this season. But before this season, we had a huge amount of success. So again, it's stripping it back in terms of what needs fixed, what do we need to address, how do we change things, what personnel needs changed. There'll be, you know, you're not fully know in the summer till, you know, bids come in for your players, or you sit down with players at the end of the season to know where the motivations are as well. And then you need to address what you need to change. But yeah, there'll be changes in the summer. Again, how big or small that may be, we'll know, you know, near that time.
Well, how would you like to fit into that rebuild?
Say again, missed you.
You have a mind to chop and change your squad in the next 4 games?
It'll depend. Again, we've not got huge numbers. You know, even at the weekend there, with Tom Rodgers an issue the day before the game. In the warm-up, he was struggling a bit, so again, he couldn't take part in the game. He's came through training today, so he'll be available tomorrow, which is good news. Out with that, James Forrest will still be missing for this midweek, but hopefully be fine afterwards. The same with Mikey Johnson. So we're missing a couple of bodies, but we're not carrying a big squad at the minute. You know, we've sent a lot of guys who are on the fringes, the younger guys out on loan to get a bit of exposure to game time towards the end of the season to put them in a better place. So we'll make some changes, but you know, with consistency to make sure that we're going out and we're in good rhythm and we go out to win the games as well and represent the club properly. But again, it comes down to training. You know, in terms of what we see in training, what we see in the games, you know, who's fighting for a jersey. You know, there's guys there who are approaching going to Euros and stuff as well, who want to make sure in the best shape possible. So we also take that into consideration.
You looking forward to seeing how Scott Brown goes on against his future employers?
I've absolutely no issues with it at all. In terms of, I know Scott inside out. I know how he operates. Ultimate professional. You know, and regardless who he's representing, he's fully committed to anything. So I've got no issues in terms of Scott approaching this game.
Okay, thank you. What being measured about the big rebuild, how would you like to fit into it? Are you a candidate going forward for manager or a candidate for director of football? How would you like to fit into the rebuild that's coming?
Again, it's not something I'm concerned about at the moment. I want to just make sure we get through the next period, and then if there's, you know, sit down and we'll have discuss things. But again, it's not something I'm concerned about at the moment.
Okay, thanks, John.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.